Good evening, one and all present here. So, today we will start with the new chapter, which is the environmental issues, which is chapter number 15, 16. So, this is the first lecture on environmental issues. So, in the last lectures, basically, we learned about ecosystem, what is the interaction between different organisms and population, and then we learn about the biodiversity and the importance of conservation of biodiversity, why we need to conserve the biodiversity. Also, we get to know what are the major threats to the biodiversity, and also we learn about different strategies by which we can preserve the loss of the biodiversity. So we can prevent the loss of biodiversity by following various strategies, or we can prevent the biodiversity either on the on-site by following the on-site conservation, which is the in situ conservation, and in some cases we need to replace the habitat of the plant or animal to the laboratory conditions or to the artificial conditions where they can be protected much more. And this is mostly done in case where there are very few numbers of the animals or the plants left, and it is really dangerous, or it may be like making them more vulnerable to become extinct if we leave them in their natural habitat. So that is known as the ex situ conservation. So now in today's lecture, we will learn about the various environmental issues. And so we will first start in today's lecture, we will discuss about one of the environmental issues, which is the air pollution. So let's start with this chapter. So firstly, we'll have the introduction. So we know that the human population has grown enormously over the last 100 years. And this means that with the increase in the population, there is the increased demand for the resources as well. So the increased population leads to the increase in the demand for the food, water, home, electricity, roads, automobiles, and numerous other commodities. So more the population, or with the increase in the population, with the advancement in the technologies, there is the increased load on the resource utilization as well. So these demands are exerting tremendous pressure on our natural resources and are also contributing to the pollution of air, water, and soil. So basically, we see that human activities and the increase in the human population size is one of the factors that has led to the increased pressure on the natural resources, and also has led to the increase or has contributed to the pollution of air, water, and soil, which are the natural resources that are available. So the need of the hour is to check the degradation and depletion of our precious natural resources and pollution without halting the process of development. So what is actually required is that, obviously, with the advancement in the technology, when we all are developing, or we all are moving towards the process of development. So the need for an hour is to check the degradation and depletion of our precious natural resources like water, soil, or air, and to prevent their pollution so that they can be used not only by us but by the future generations as well, without halting the process of development. So what actually is pollution? So pollution is any undesirable change in the physical, chemical, or biological characteristics of air, land, water, or soil. So basically we can say that it is a kind of any uh, addition of some contaminants, maybe it's some chemical components or the biological components, or it is basically the change. It is the basically undesirable change which is not required and which is not desirable in the physical, chemical, or biological properties of air, land, water, or the soil that surrounds us. So, for example, we do not want excess of sulfur dioxide or excess of harmful gases in the air, because we know that we are dependent on air for the process of respiration. So the presence of these harmful gases will affect the respiratory system of humans, as well as it will have a negative impact on the plants and animals. So, so therefore, these such undesirable changes are referred to as pollution, and these changes are not required by us. So therefore, it is really important to prevent these undesirable changes in the physical, chemical or biological characteristics of the air, land, water or soil. Agents that bring about such undesirable changes are called as the pollutants. So the agents or the materials that are responsible for these undesirable changes are called as the pollutants. In order to control the environmental pollution, the government of India has passed an act which is known as the Environment Protection Act 1986 to protect and improve the quality of our environment. So this Environmental Protection Act was passed by the government of India in 1986 that actually implements the protection and improve that was implemented to protect with the aim to protect and improve the quality of environment that includes the air, water or soil. So this was about what is actually the pollution and what are the pollutants, and this was the act. So it is very important to recall these acts whenever it will be discussed later in the chapters also. So which act was passed for what purposes? So Environmental Protection Act was passed by Government of India in 1986 with the aim to protect and improve the quality of our environment. So in today's lecture, we will mainly focus. So in this lecture series on environmental issues, we will be focusing on different types of pollution and what are the different strategies that can be followed to prevent those pollutions, like to prevent the increase in the pollution. And so we will study the air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution one by one. And in today's lecture, we will be dealing with the air pollution. So air pollution is basically the changes, undesirable changes in the physical, biological or chemical properties of the air. So it is essentially the existence of an excessive amount of harmful substances that are present in the atmosphere of the earth. Air pollutants, as we know that we all are dependent on the air for our respiratory needs. Therefore, air pollutants can cause injury to the living organisms. So they may reduce, for example, they may cause some respiratory problems in humans, or they may reduce the growth and yield of the crops that cause the premature death of the plants. Or air pollutants also deleteriously affect the respiratory system, as I mentioned, for in case of humans and animals. Harmful effects depend, however, the harmful effects of the pollutants depend on the concentration of pollutants in which, for example, CO2. CO2 is normally present in the atmosphere, but if it exceeds up to a certain limit, then it becomes the harmful, then it starts exerting harmful effects. So the harmful effects of the pollutant depends on the concentration of the pollutant, duration of the exposure, for how long we are exposed to that polluted environment, and the organism. So the sensitivity of the organism to deal with that pollutant is also important in checking the harmful effects. So the harmful effects of the depends on the concentration of the pollutants, duration of exposure, and the organism. So what are the different sources of air pollution? So mainly there are two sources of air pollution. The first one is the natural sources. The second one are the man-made sources. So we know that in nature also there are certain activities that leads to the release of harmful gases into the atmosphere, thus resulting in the contamination or the undesirable changes, as I mentioned, in the properties of the air that was present in the surrounding, leading to the air pollution. Also, beside natural sources of air pollution, we also have some man-made sources of air pollution, where some artificial sources like vehicles, as we know, so the use of vehicles or the burning of fuels basically leads to the release of harmful gases into the atmosphere, and release of harmful gases, particulate matter into the atmosphere, resulting in the pollution of the air. So natural resources of air pollution are chemicals like sulfur, chlorine, and ash, which are released into the environment from natural resources like volcanic eruptions, fires in the forest, methane combustion caused by the animal digestion such as cattle. So these are some of the natural sources of air pollution that are basically caused due to some natural activities like volcanic eruptions that may be uh, that is actually a natural cause. Fires in the forest that may be man-made or that may be natural as well. So fires in the forest, sometimes it's natural fire that happens. So fires in the forest may be the cause that results in the ashes or release of ashes and the harm gases into the atmosphere. Methane combustion, which is caused by the animal digestion such as cattle. There are some man-made sources for the air pollution as well. So the man-made sources are basically caused by the artificial sources. So man-made sources basically include artificial sources that contributes to the air pollution, and it is due to the combustion of some specific fuels. For example, if we know that if we are using petrol or diesel, then these fuels actually release gases into the atmosphere. Also, the waste that is air, the waste that is released into the air, the harmful gases that is released into the air by the industries, various industries. So the majority of industrial sources burn fuel using heating devices, and the waste gets into the air, thereby contaminating the air and making it less suitable for the use by the animals, plants, and humans. So the major human made sources of air pollution are free sources such as automobiles, planes, and water transportation. So we know that major air pollution sources are the transportation. So automobiles, planes, water transportation are some of the major sources of air pollution in the by the man-made sources. So the air pollution, the sources of air pollution can either be classified as natural sources or man-made sources. They can be classified as indoor air pollution and outdoor air pollution. So the indoor air pollution includes various factors like dusting of the house or mosquito repellents which we use. So when we are using mosquito repellents, obviously we are releasing some chemicals. The machine is releasing some chemicals into the air in our vicinity, and thereby leading to the pollution of that air, because these particles will form the sediment, may form the sediment and may settle down, thus contaminating the air. Or the wall and furniture paints that leads to the release of some aerosols, that may lead to the release of some aerosols. Use of agarbattis or wood and paper burning, or we may say that the use of the transports or the chulas and the use of tobacco or smoke or like smoking may lead to the release of harmful compounds into the air, and these are some of the sources of the indoor air pollution. Now there are some outdoor sources of air pollution as well. So the construction of road and the dust that is released due to the construction of these roads is one of the major sources of outdoor air pollution. The emission of harmful gases or the gases due to the burning of the fuels by the when fuels that are used in the vehicles leads to the emission of gases into the atmosphere that may lead to the contamination of the air or lead to the undesirable changes in the air, resulting in the pollution. Biomass burning is also one of the sources of outdoor air pollution. Industries we know is a major source for outdoor air pollution, is one of the major sources because industries release a large amount of air like harmful gases, or like large amount of gases are released from the industries on everyday basis into the atmosphere, leading to the air pollution. Next, we have open waste burning. The transportation is one of the major causes, and brick kilns, where the brick factories basically where the bricks are prepared. So these are some of the sources of outdoor air pollution. So this was about the air pollution and the sources of different air pollution that can be natural or man-made or maybe outdoor or indoor. Now we know that what are pollutants. So the agents that bring about such undesirable changes are known as pollutants. So air pollutants can be defined into various types based on these factors. So firstly, we can define the air pollution on the basis of the source. Next, we can define the air pollution on the basis of mode of release, as I mentioned, indoor, outdoor. Thirdly, we can define the air pollutants as a chemical composition and size. That what is the size of those like air, air pollutants, and whether they are gaseous or some solid particles or aerosols. So air pollutants on the basis of source can be defined as primary air pollutants and secondary air pollutants. As the name suggests, primary air pollutants results in the direct emission are the pollutants that are directly emitted into the atmosphere. For example, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxides, and particulate matters. Secondary air pollutants are the ones that react with the atmospheric pollutants and then leads to the contamination. For example, the ozone and different nitrogen oxides. On the basis of mode of release, as I mentioned, it can be indoor or outdoor. So indoor air pollutants are released by the activity like cooking, smoking, air conditioning, etc. So this may lead to the release of gases like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, volatile organic compounds, etc. So VOC stands for volatile organic compounds. The outdoor mode of release, like the outdoor air pollutants, may be due to the industrial processes, transportation, that may lead to the release of the particulate matter, carbon monoxide, various nitrogen oxides, and volatile organic compounds. The third category of the air pollutants can be defined on the basis of the chemical composition and size. So on the basis of chemical composition and size, they can be defined as either the particulate matter that includes the solid or the liquid aerosols, or the gaseous matter which is miscible with air in the vapor form. So the particulate matter includes can be of different size, 0.1 micron, 2.5 micron, 10 micron, etc. While the gaseous sources may include the sulfur oxides, ozone, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxides, and the volatile organic compounds. So this was the classification of air pollutants. So if I repeat it again in short, so basically air pollutants are the compounds that leads to the decrease in the quality of the air in our surroundings. So basically these are the compounds or the agents that are responsible for polluting the air. So these air pollutants can broadly be classified into three categories based on their source, mode of release, chemical composition, and size. If I talk about the source, they can be classified as primary air pollutants or secondary air pollutants. Primary, as the name suggests, which is directly emitted into the atmosphere. Secondary, as the name suggests, they may react with some atmospheric, like leads to some reaction with the atmospheric pollutants. On the basis of mode of release, it can be indoor due to some indoor activities like cooking, smoking, air conditioning, etc. And outdoor, that includes the outdoor activities like the industrial process, transportation, etc. And the third very important class is on the basis of chemical composition and size, that is the particulate matter and the gaseous. On the basis of that, they can either be defined as particulate matter or the gaseous air pollutants. So basically, there are various causes of air pollution, and the anthropogenic causes includes the causes due to the humans. So basically, this figure represents the anthropogenic causes of air pollution. So here the fossil fuels, solid, liquid, or gaseous, are mainly formed by the carbon and hydrogen in various ratios. So we know that the fossil fuels that are formed, like for example, methane, ethane, all of them have they may be solid, liquid, or gases, and they are mainly formed by the different ratios of the carbon and hydrogen. So during the combustion of these fuels, they may either be partially they may either undergo complete combustion, they may undergo incomplete combustion, and may lead to the formation of the secondary products of complete consumption, or may also result in the pollutants that are produced from the fuel impurities. So basically, due to the incomplete combustion, so when there is a complete combustion of the fossil fuels, so it will lead to the release of the carbon dioxide and water. However, when there is an incomplete combustion of the fossil fuels, as we can see in this. So these fossil fuels, on the basis of the combustion process, degree of combustion leads to the release of different compounds or the different gases into the atmosphere. So we can see that the complete combustion leads to the release of carbon dioxide and water, while the incomplete combustion or during the incomplete combustion or the other substances in the fuels like nitrogen, sulfur, organic compounds, heavy metals and other compounds, besides CO2 and H2O, other chemical compounds will be formed, and these compounds are dangerous both to humans and the environment if their concentration is above the desired concentration. And we can see that the incomplete combustion may lead to the formation of the carbon monoxide, which is highly toxic, and it may lead to the release of some particulate matter or hydrocarbons, some smaller hydrocarbons. The secondary products of complete combustion may include the nitrogen oxide that may or may not be harmful depending on the type of the oxide. The pollutants that are produced from the fuel impurities may also include the nitrogen oxides, as I mentioned, flying ash, SO2, SO3, that is the various oxides of the sulfur, like sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide. So basically, the fuels or the fossil fuels or the biofuels, which are the carbon-based fuels, or the combustion installation like boilers, steam generators, furnaces, piston engines, gas turbines, residentials, others, leads to the release or the combustion process of this fuel, and the combustion of these fuels is may lead to the pollution of the air. So basically these are emitted into the air, affecting the air quality and therefore affecting the environment. So the anthropogenic causes, that is the human activities, leads to the uh, release of the pollutants into the environment, especially with the help like when we are using the fossil fuels, be it in outdoor condition or indoor condition. So the use of fossil fuels and the degree of consumption of fossil fuels is an important factor of what we are actually releasing into the atmosphere. So we know that it is therefore really important that whatever we are releasing into the atmosphere, we should try to decrease the type of the substances that may act as a pollutant. So the smokestacks of thermal power plants, smelters, and other industries that release particulate and gaseous air pollutants together with harmless gases such as nitrogen, oxygen, leads to the release of these harmful gases into the atmosphere. So these pollutants must be separated or filtered before they are released into the environment. So thus thereby releasing the harmless gases into the atmosphere. So this can be done by the use of the electrostatic precipitator. So electrostatic precipitator can be installed in the industries, and it can remove over 99% of the particulate matter present in the exhaust from a thermal power plant. So basically the electrostatic precipitator is based on the principle that it has electrode wires, and these electrode wires are maintained at several thousand volts, and these such high voltage produces a corona that releases the electrons into the environment, into the vicinity. So basically these electrons which are the corona that releases the electrons attached to the dust particles, giving them a net negative charge, as we can see in this figure, that these electrons interact with the dust particles, thereby giving them a net negative charge. Then we have a collecting plate. So we can see that we have a dirty air that enters from this. So the dust particles then interact with the discharge corona and they acquire a negative charge. The collecting plates are grounded and attract the charged dust particles. The velocity of air between the plates must be low enough to allow the dust to fall. A scrubber can remove the gases like sulfur dioxide. In a scrubber, basically what happens is the exhaust passes through a spray of water or lime. So this dirty air enters from here, and so this is a scrubber and this is an electrostatic precipitator. So the both of them can be used. So the electrostatic precipitator works on the principle of like by providing the negative charge to the dust particles and then collecting those dust particles. The next is this like the scrubber. So the scrubber can remove the gases like sulfur dioxide. So basically the dirty air enters into this and is then made to interact with the water spray. Then we spray the water or the lime on that. Recently, it is it has recently been realized that, so basically after interacting with the water or lime, they acquire heavy weight, due to which they can settle down and the only the clean air is released into the atmosphere. So recently we have realized the dangers of particulate matter that are very, very small and are not removed by these precipitators. So particulate matter, which is really small in size, is difficult to be settled down, and therefore they pose more threat to the environment and to the humans. So what are the effects of air pollution? So according to the Central Pollution Control Board CPCB, particulate size 2.5 micrometers or less in diameter, that is PM 2.5, are responsible for causing the greatest harm to human health. These fine particulates can be inhaled deep into the lungs, can easily be brought into the lungs, and can cause breathing and respiratory symptoms. It may lead to the irritation, inflammation in the lungs, and damage to the lungs and premature deaths. So basically, the point is that lesser the size of the particulate matter, difficult to deal with it, because these particulate matters are difficult to be settled down due to their lesser size, and they may easily reach to the lungs as compared to the larger particulate matters, and thereby it can cause the breathing and respiratory symptoms like irritation, inflammation, and damage to the lungs and premature deaths. Also, recently in 1987, it was that beside air pollution, noise pollution was also identified. So in India, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act came into force in 1981, but it was amended in 1987 to include noise as an air pollutant. So basically, noise is identified as an air pollutant. We know that noise is what? So noise is an undesired high level of sound. So noise can cause the psychological and physiological disorders. Some people may feel like nausea due to the high sound which they hear. So high decibel noise can damage the eardrums, thus permanently impairing the hearing ability of the individual. Even the chronic exposure to a relatively lower noise level of cities may permanently damage the hearing abilities of humans. Also, it may cause the sleeplessness, increased heartbeat. It may alter the breathing patterns, thus considerably stressing the humans. Therefore, noise has been included as an air pollutant in 1987 under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act that was implemented in India. So reduction of noise in industries can be affected by the use of sound absorbent materials or by muffling noise. Stringent following of laws laid down in relation to the noise, like delimitation of horn-free zones around hospitals and schools, permissible sound levels of crackers and of loudspeakers, timing after which loudspeakers cannot be played, etc., need to be enforced strictly to protect ourselves from the noise pollution. So we may not be realizing the fact that noise may act as a pollutant, but if we actually look into the figures, so noise is one of a noise can be considered as one of the air pollutants because it has harmful effects on the effect on the health of humans, plants, and animals, and it may cause the sleeplessness, increased heartbeat, altered breathing pattern, stressing the humans. So therefore, stringent laws are required, like stringent following of the laws are required to prevent the increase in the levels of the noise in the atmosphere. So this can be done by delimitation of the horn-free zones around hospitals and schools, permissible sound levels of crackers, loudspeakers, and a particular timing after which the loudspeakers cannot be played. So when such laws are enforced strictly, we may protect ourselves from the noise pollution. So this was about preventing from the noise pollution. The next is the controlling vehicular pollution. So we know that with its very large population, so this is a case study basically. So this is a case study that is described in the NCRT. So we know that it is really important that when we are talking about the air pollution, it is really important to control the vehicular pollution. So vehicular pollution can be this is a case study related to Delhi. where we know that the air quality is very poor due to the high traffic burden in that city. So with its very large population of vehicular traffic, Delhi leads the country in its levels of air pollution. It has more cars than the states of Gujarat and West Bengal put together. So in 1990s, Delhi ranked fourth among the 41 most polluted cities of the world. And air pollution problems in Delhi became so serious that a public interest litigation, that is PIL, was filed in the Supreme Court of India. And after being sanctioned very strongly by the Supreme Court under its directives, the government was asked to take within a specified time period the appropriate measures, including switching over the entire fleet of public transport. That is the buses that were running on the diesel. So the government was asked to switch those public transports from diesels to the use of the compressed natural gas. So what will be the advantages of using the compressed natural gas over the diesel? So we know that the CNG burns most efficiently. So basically under this act, all the buses of Delhi were converted to run on CNG by the end of 2002. Now, what are the advantages of using CNG over the diesel is that CNG burns more efficiently, more effectively, unlike petrol or diesel in the automobiles, and very little of it is left unburned. So we know, like as we studied in the previous slides as well, that the degree of combustion also affect the type of the particulate matter, also affect the type of the gases or the pollutants that are released into the atmosphere. So more efficiently a fuel burn, the more better, like the less pollutants it will release. So CNG burns most efficiently, unlike petrol or diesel, and a very little amount of it is left unburned. Also, CNG is cheaper, that is CNG, compressed natural gas, is cheaper than the petrol or diesel. It cannot be siphoned off by thieves and adulterated, like we cannot contaminate it like the petrol or diesel easily. The main problem with switching over to CNG is the difficulty of laying down the pipelines that actually delivers the CNG through distribution points, pumps, and ensuring uninterrupted supply. Although now in today's time we have many centers, like still not many, but we have centers of installed centers that delivers distribution points or the pumps that ensures the uninterrupted supply of compressed natural gas. Simultaneously, parallel steps taken in Delhi for reducing vehicular population also include phasing out of old vehicles, use of unleaded petrol, use of low sulfur petrol and diesel, use of catalytic converter in vehicles, and the application of stringent pollution level norms for the vehicles, etc. So these were some of these steps that the Delhi government took at that time to prevent the pollution due to the vehicles. So we know that with like the older vehicles, like with the uh, time, due to the inefficiency of engine, it might lead to the improper combustion of the fuels. So therefore the government phased out the old vehicles. It limits the use of unleaded petrol, use of low sulfur petrol and diesel. Use of includes the phasing out of old vehicles. It includes the use of unleaded petrol, use of low sulfur petrol and diesel, and use of catalytic converters in vehicles. That so these steps were taken strictly to control the pollution levels in the Delhi. So the government of India, through a new auto fuel policy, has laid out a roadmap to cut down vehicular pollution in Indian cities. And the more stringent norms are for fuels means steadily reducing the sulfur and aromatic content in the petrol and diesel fuels. So Euro 3 norms, for example, stipulate that sulfur can be controlled at 350 parts per million ppm in diesel and 150 parts per million in petrol. Aromatic hydrocarbons are to be contained at 42% of the concerned fuel. The goal, according to the roadmap, is to reduce the sulfur to 50 ppm in petrol, so that less the amount of sulfur in the petrol, less it is released, obviously, and petrol and diesel, and bring down to the level of 35%. So corresponding to the fuel, vehicle engines will also need to be upgraded, because we need such engines that may work with the fuels that have 50 parts per million in petrol, 50 that have that contain sulfur to 50 parts per million in petrol or diesel. So we need such vehicle engines also. So corresponding to the fuel, vehicle engines will also need to be upgraded. So the Bharat stage emission norms. So today most of the vehicles, most of the engines are based on this. Most of the four-wheelers, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, all are following the norms of Bharat Stage 4. So what is actually the Bharat Stage emission norms? So these are the norms by, so the Bharat Stage emission norms are India's foremost emission standards for the auto industry. So for the automobile industries, these are the norms that have been formulated. India adopted the first set of these norms for petrol cars in 1991 and for diesel cars in 1992. And since then, the Indian auto sector has been mandated to follow various iterations of the Bharat stage emission norms, or which are known as BS norms in short, since 2000. And these have been implemented with the intention to regulate the emission by improving the technology and fuel efficiency. So basically, these norms are being formulated and they are amended at different time points. And these norms have been implemented with the intention to regulate the emission of different gases into the atmosphere by improving the technology, that is, by improving the efficiency of the engines and the fuel efficiency. So BS norms 3, 4, and 6 has been described in this table. So that describes the different composition of the gases in petrol and diesel. So the carbon oxide composition or the hydrocarbon composition or the nitrogen oxides carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons or the nitrogen oxide composition has been described. And we can see that a lot has been improved from BS3, that is Bharat Stage 3 norms, to Bharat Stage 4 norms. And we are reducing the amount of the carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, or the nitrogen oxides that are released from either by the use of the petrol or the diesel in the vehicles. Now we are heading towards the BS6 norms that will further lead to the decrease of these hydrocarbons or the nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere. So mass emission standard, which is the Bharat Stage 2, which is equivalent to Euro 2 norms, are no more applicable in any of the cities, and the details of the latest mass are provided below. So latest mass emission standards follow the Bharat Stage 4 norms, and they have been implemented throughout the country since April 2017. So they have been implemented for both for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers, and all of these all of these vehicles or the automobile industries that deals with the two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or four-wheelers have to follow these guidelines or have to follow the regulatories that are being proposed in these Bharat stage norms. So they have to design the engines and they have to so that the fuel efficiency can be increased, like they have to increase the fuel efficiency and they have to design the engine in such a way that they can efficiently burn those fuels. So basically, these is the mass emission standards in India, so which are currently followed. So throughout the country, that was implemented in April 2017. For two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers, the Bharat Stage 4 norms are followed. So this was all about the air pollution. What are the different sources of air pollution? How can we control the air pollution? How noise act as a air pollutant, and what are the different Bharat stage norms? What is the regulatories? What is the importance of implementing these Bharat stage norms? And what is the current Bharat stage norm that the all over the cities in the India are following? So we are currently following the Bharat stage norm 4, and we are heading towards the Bharat stage norm. So this was all about for today's class. In the next class, we will learn about the water pollution and other different types of pollution. Thank you all for attending this lecture. See you all in the next lecture.